And the other thing that really was interesting is the analogy that you started with, teach a man to fish, or give a man a fish, teach a man to fish, teach a man to invent fishing. And you said it goes deeper than that. Using that same analogy, it'd be really interesting to figure out what the next layer is that you're talking about that fits into that analogy.
Well, as it turns out, there's an answer to that. This is not, well, it's odd because when you get down to these lowest levels, it actually gets very simple by definition, because most of complicatedness is all the stuff. When you get very low, it gets very simple. So almost at the bottom, not quite at the bottom. When you get to the very bottom, it actually isn't, it's not extremely simple, but it's very difficult to communicate. But almost at the bottom, we actually can identify a handful of basic capacities. I'm going to see if I can walk you through these basic capacities. One is what I'm going to call discernment. And do either of you recall the effort as a kid of trying to learn how to raise one eyebrow without raising the other eyebrow? Or
I can't even do that now.
Anything? Oh, good. Well, now's a good time. Can you? Evie?
Or wiggle your toes independently. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Or
you're not doing it. Oh, yeah, you're doing it.
So this is a very simple thing. You can also do it, by the way, with, say, juggling, when you're trying to learn how to juggle. You're entering into a space where you don't have any idea what it would mean to be doing the right thing. When you're first trying to learn how to raise one eyebrow and not another eyebrow, you'll find that you'll do all kinds of weird stuff. Your face will be screwed up and you'll be making all kinds of weird faces. You'll raise both eyebrows. You'll squeeze your nose because you don't actually have a path that knows how to do that. You have a sense of what it is you want to do. You want to raise one eyebrow, which is nice, but you don't actually know how at all. You're entering into a complete space of uncertainty. And discernment is a particular capacity of being able to sense that which is more in the direction and from that which is less in the direction.
Right.
And I can't actually go any deeper than that. It's the ability to sense very subtly, at first very, very subtly, that which is more in the direction and that which is less. So if you use juggling as the example, if you've ever tried to learn how to juggle, there's a notion where you're just beginning the process. You're like throwing the ball, and then maybe you begin to get, there it is, and like a little tiny bit. It's very vague. It can't be named or described. It's more in the sense of building a feeling and constructing a whole set of deep feelings that have a way of orienting. So the second capacity is something like attunement. But to do attunement, I have to do the third, which is coherence. So coherence is the degree to which you begin to be able to bring together a set of different kinds of senses and actions that belong together. So back to the notion of raising one eyebrow and not another eyebrow, there's a whole bunch of different kinds of things that all have to happen simultaneously. And in coherence, you're beginning to be able to grasp them as a whole. You're beginning to be able to sort of relate to them as a single coherent phenomenon, and to bring them into relationship with each other where they're beginning to actually operate as a smooth whole. You can imagine that if you were to imagine, say, for example, a fishbowl that has a whole bunch of floating around in it, and you're trying to get light to shine through it, to the degree to which you can go in and just very precisely move all of the dirt out of the water at once. That action of being able to separate dirt from water is a sense of discernment, that which is more than that which is not. And the degree to which you're actually being able to pull all of it out and you're bringing the fishbowl into coherence. You're having present precisely all that is necessary and precisely none that is not necessary. And you're bringing it all into a kind of relationship that causes it to come together as a whole. So now think about like the fluidity of juggling, where there's a whole bunch of distinct motions. You have to be able to grab a ball, you have to be able to throw a ball, you have to be able to see it and have the hand-eye coordination to be able to move and catch it. But you can't do these discrete steps. You have to actually move into a stage where they're all happening as a single unit that is all in very tight relationship to each other. Attunement now then is the relationship between discernment and coherence, where you're able to increasingly become capable of using discernment in the context of a given coherence to be able to achieve coherence. An interesting metaphor that a lot of people are familiar with, if they're old enough, is when you're tuning a radio. If you have an old, like a FM or AM radio, you notice where, let's say the signal is being broadcast at 90 FM and your radio is right now at 88.5. You just get noise. It's just static. And then 88.7, 88.9, somewhere around 88.9, suddenly you can start hearing music, but it's still a lot of noise. And then when you get to 90, in this case it would be 90.1 because I'm going up by twos, it just snaps into clarity. And you can hear the music and almost all the noise drops away. You're attuning. You're actually making the antenna more discerning in the context of the electromagnetic frequency, where it's now coherent. The antenna is coherent. The antenna is tuned to the frequency of 90.1. The signal is being broadcast at the frequency of 90.1. The whole now is the relationship between these two things, and suddenly, shoop, the music jumps out. So think about the way that a child learns how to stand. Right? So it has just begun the process of being able to move its legs. It can crawl, but it can't quite stand. Well, standing requires things like being able to control your leg muscles, but it also requires things like being able to have really sensitive awareness of which direction your body is falling. It's not easy to be standing up on 2 feet. There's a lot of complexity. Think about how hard it's been to build a robot that can stand on 2 feet. There's a lot of sensing that needs to be done, and then micro adjustments of those muscles. So you have to have a certain capacity in having the muscles respond, not too much, not too strong, like lurching back and forth, but also a sensitive feedback loop between your sensors of where you're falling and your actuators of controlling your balance so that suddenly you're now standing up. Right? So that's an example of moving into a coherent motion of being able to actually stand up is the process of having these sensitive relationships between sensing and acting that become entrained with each other until they have the space of coherence that now has an enormous amount of clarity. So that's the next step, which is clarity. Remember we talked about how the radio signal goes from static to suddenly you can hear the music very easily? When a system enters into coherence, it also enters into the state of clarity, which means that whatever signal is trying to come through can come through with a very large amount of signal with a very small amount of noise, even if it has not much energy. That's a sort of a formal definition. Back to our radio station, the radio antenna was broadcasting at the same level of energy. The amount of electricity driving the radio signal has been the same all along. You can't hear it, you can't hear it, you can't hear it. You enter into clarity and bam, you can hear it perfectly. The same thing happens in literally any kind of learning environment. Once you achieve coherence, then what happens is as you move into clarity, the thing that is endeavoring to be learned, the skill of raising your eyebrow, the skill of juggling, the skill of fishing, suddenly becomes capable of being received without a whole lot of effort. The signal of what is going on in the world is suddenly you've become an instrument that can receive that signal, it's all of its nuance and complexity, and be able to bring it in and perceive it. So then the last is embodiment, which is now that you can actually receive that signal, you now begin the process of turning it into something that you can easily access over and over again with little less and less effort. So you begin to sort of hardwire or construct a set of habits around the set of skills that you've now carefully turned into a coherent whole so that you're able to achieve a level of coherence quickly. So now you can juggle. And to juggle is no longer a struggle. To juggle is now a capacity that you have developed. You've now learned to fish. So now fishing is something that you can do. And by the way, you can do it with less and less and less energy. And then in relationship to other kinds of things, it becomes the basis for doing a whole new set of things. Now it becomes a skill or a capacity that you can plug into another cycle up. So if you imagine the development of a child first has to be able to differentiate in its visual field. It has to build a certain level of discernment to separate the blooming, buzzing confusion of all the shit that happens to be in the world. That as a newborn infant, literally there's no way of knowing. Then it has to be able to separate, say, a pea, a small round sphere, from the background of a plate. Well, separately, at the same time, it's learning how to be able to notice that it has hands. And then it's being able to notice how to actually do things with its fingers, to get its fingers to close with enough control that it can actually grasp something with those little fingers. So now it's got two separate capacities that it's built as habits. It's got the ability to see something, judge its distance from where it is. It's got the ability to grasp something. So now it's going to struggle and work on the deeper skill set of being able to see something and reach out and grab it. I don't know if you've ever raised a child, but that's a very interesting thing to watch. So then, of course, once it has the ability to see something and reach out and grab it, then it's going to work on doing something with it, bring it to its mouth. Right? So you see this cycle, and each cycle participates in exactly the same dynamics: discernment, attunement, coherence, clarity, insight. Insight is that process of being able to actually have that signal come all the way through and then layering it into embodiment. And then that becomes available for the next layer up. So that cycle is the deepest basis of any kind of capacity building in any possible domain. So whether you are trying to learn how to create fire, or you're trying to learn how to do physics, or you're trying to learn how to be in relationship with another person, or you're trying to learn how to parent, or you're trying to learn how to pee, it doesn't matter. Those are the fundamental basis of any ability to go from where you are to a higher level of capacity. That was the one that takes you from giving a fish, to teaching a fish, to teaching how to learn how to fish, to the deep basis of all possible kinds of learning in any possible domain.
Right. Can you repeat the cycle again?
Yeah, sure. It's discernment, attunement, coherence, clarity, insight, embodiment.
I'd imagine this has been written about extensively, and there are books people could pick up to learn. So what is the subject that this is encapsulated inside of? How to learn?
Philosophy of education and developmental psychology.
So coming back to round this off and bring it back to what's practical for the truck driver again, what problems does this solve for the truck driver? How does this apply for someone in their day-to-day lives?
Okay, so there's going to be a couple of distinct things. The first is that because this is so deep, it turns out to be relevant regardless of what's going on. So to the degree to which you've actually developed a significant degree of embodied capacity in these raw capacities, remember, this is the deep basis of learning itself, you now actually have the ability to learn in any context. So, for example, in a world where things are moving and changing rapidly, where maybe the path of learning how to be a plumber suddenly just evaporates because we've made those into robots, and the path of learning how to be a physicist evaporates because AI is doing that well. As things are changing rapidly, you actually need to be able to have a deeper basis for relationship with the environment that you're operating in, because that basis is less subject to the sort of the vicissitudes of superficial change. These particular characteristics, because they are in fact the deepest basis of learning, are invariant, meaning that if you build masterful skillfulness in this cycle, meaning you build mastery of discernment, mastery of attunement, mastery of coherence, mastery of clarity, mastery of insight, and mastery of embodiment, then you are fully prepared to respond to any possible set of circumstances in your environment. Meaning that if you find yourself suddenly on Mars and everybody's gone and you have no idea what to do and you're by yourself, you have the raw toolkit from which to build the tools to respond to what is happening. So it's the strongest basis, the strongest you can be, the most adaptive you can possibly be. Now, as a truck driver, you're going to find yourself very soon in a circumstance where the set of skills that you've built are increasingly obsolete. And this is true, by the way, of course, of almost everybody, that for a very long period of time, several centuries at least, we've operated on an educational structure where we give people knowledge and we give them very specific skills, but we do not give them the basis of learning so that they can be robots, ultimately. You can add 2 + 2 in your head, but you don't have any idea what it means to have actually invented arithmetic. You can't actually understand why 2 + 2 = 4. You could just do it, rote. Right? And that was the phase of human civilization where creating a very large number of robots was useful and important. And I don't mean that disparagingly. I mean it in the very specific sense that people have been trained to have certain kinds of knowledge and certain rote skills that are hard to do and require a lot of skillfulness to execute on, but have not been trained in the deep basis that would allow them to self-teach anything. Now, of course, we're entering into the phase where those kinds of abilities, your skills, and in particular your knowledge, aren't particularly interesting anymore. You can imagine that being able to add and multiply large numbers. Remember, the idea of a calculator literally used to be a person, an actual human being, who was trained in doing calculation quickly and with precision. And then we invented a tool that could do that more quickly and with more precision. And so to be a calculator no longer was a valuable way of contributing to the culture. Well, this is happening everywhere, and it's going to be happening at an accelerating pace. And so if what you think you're going to do to respond to that is you're going to leap from one sinking island to another sinking island. Oh, well, I'll stop being a truck driver, and now I'm going to be a software programmer. You may have bought yourself a little bit of time, but, well, guess what? Software programming is going to go underwater too. So is doctor, and so is fill in the blank. And I picked software programmer on purpose because it's obviously going to be one of the taller islands. But unless you happen to be really, really good at it, the portion that you're doing is going to be automated by the people who are above you on that stack, because that's where a lot of the automation is happening. So,
interestingly, if I can just kind of interject here, we've been playing a lot of music lately, and I've downloaded a few new applications. I've been outside of the music production scene for a long time, and suddenly I'm back into it, and I see all these new software applications that allow for automatic arpeggiation of scales and chords and very complicated, very advanced chord structures that can be arranged for you automatically. So even these very high-level artistic, creative structures are now just being, like you can have an improvised lead that is automatically beautiful and in some sort of very complex jazz structure, and you can have that generated for you with the push of a button. I mean, that's one of those things I would have thought would be kind of last to go, is the artistic expression, but it's actually easier to make that go than I would imagine, like you say, software programming.
Right. Well, that's it. So what ends up happening is that things that are the deepest are the things that are going to last. And so if you're trying to figure out where to go there. So I can invert it. The things that are the deepest are also the things that are the highest. So if the flood is coming and you're seeking high ground, this is the highest ground. And so what I can say also is that it is not just the highest ground that we've found, it actually is the highest ground. There is nothing. There is no way to go any higher to be more safe. It is the actual basis upon which everything else derives. So that's one piece. Now, another piece, which is very interesting, is because it is so foundational, it also is related to more kinds of things. So we've just been talking about it in the context of, call it, useful skills or ways of providing value. So moving from being a truck driver to being a software programmer or a chef. But these things are at the bottom of everything. So how to be able to be in relationship with yourself, how to be able to be a good friend, how to be able to be a good parent, how to make choices about what to eat. All possible choice making in all possible contexts are founded on these kinds of capacities. And so not only are these kinds of capacities primordially useful in the context of how to do stuff in, call it, maybe the economic domain, they are actually primordially useful in all domains. And so they are the most useful things to have at the basis of your fundamental portfolio of things that you're good at. Let me just add the last, just to make sure we have the right kind of context. A deep insight that is not very well shared is that pace of change matters. That if things are changing slowly, it's actually okay to just have the surface level adaptive skills or capacities associated with the place that you're at. If, being able to, let me think of a simple example. If being able to grow yams is adequate to feed you and your family, and the place that you're at is going to have the same essential characteristics for yam growing for 1,000,000 years, then it's actually kind of okay to just sort of have the rituals of yam growing passed down from person to person without having to build a deeper basis that would allow you to also be able to grow wheat or to be able to fish. But if things are changing, you have to go deeper. And the faster they're changing, the deeper you have to go. And so because we're in a space where accelerating change is a primary characteristic, we're also in a space where depth is a primary characteristic.
Right.
And like you said, this relates to all domains. For example, both of us have done a lot of meditation, and it's the same kind of process. At a certain point, you can't really be taught. You just have to figure out how to deconstruct your own mind and to keep deconstructing it until there's nothing left to deconstruct. And so, the whole process that you're talking about relates to everything, including things that are very experiential and kind of very subjective.
Yes. And now that you just brought into my mind, not sure how, maybe the next major move, which is we've now been talking about all of this from the point of view of a single person. But everything that we've been talking about is perfectly, exactly relevant in the context of groups of people. And in fact, going down also. Your cells and organs relate to each other in this way to make you. So there's a continuity going from quantum phenomena all the way up to the universe. But in the particular case, you as an individual have relations of coherence with regard to certain capacities to render them into embodiment. But say, for example, the two of you as a group, as a couple, as a partnership, also have this loop. But it's at the level of the relationship. The relationship itself has a certain kind of agency, it has a certain kind of discernment that neither of you holds completely. There's a wholeness to it that is equivalent to the wholeness of, for example, the relationships of your muscles that enable you to juggle. There's something about the way the relationship builds its own capacities to do things as a relationship. And a jazz band is the classic example. That there's something about the jazz band that is synergistic. It is emergent. It is more than just the actual players. There's something about the coming togetherness in a form of coherence that allows the jazz band as a band to do something that is not available in any of the distinct individuals. And you have to play together, right? You have to actually build discernment as a whole. You have to build attunement as a whole. You have to build coherence as a whole. And then, of course, you have built embodiment as a whole, which allows you to go out and do something, like play jazz well. That's another deep, important thing because these plug together. In order for me to most fully enter into relationship with you, to the degree to which I've built mastery of discernment in myself, I can then use that mastery of discernment in myself in the process of building skillfulness in discernment as us.